Hello and welcome to the Proptech Hot Seat on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we explore trends and technologies right across the built environment. This show is brought to you through Proptech Ireland, the hub for innovators, investors and indeed for industry leaders. In the Proptech Hot Seat today is Konrad Rotthege, founder of Conveyo, a VC-backed PropTech startup that's changing the way we buy and sell homes. Konrad, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Carol.
Thank you, Konrad. You might just talk to us about Conveyo. What exactly is the offering?
So Conveyo stands for the new way that we buy and sell property in the UK, residential property to be precise. Conveyo is a collaborative conveyancing portal that sources data that is needed for the property transaction. And it sources data about the parties, the home buyer and the home seller, but also about the property itself. And we do so very early on in the process. So there's a lot of talk at the moment about upfront information and how that can be beneficial to transactions. And our platform sources that information at listing already, so that when a potential buyer comes in, that information is all available.
You might just talk us through the offering. Who is the obviously I understand the users, but who pays for your service?
So the home buyers and sellers pay for our service. We charge a platform fee, which is quite insignificant compared to the amount of the transaction or the legal fees. But we also coordinate the legal work stream for the home buyers and for the home sellers, meaning that we have both ends of the transaction. And we do so with our solicitor partners who are connected to our platform and who we work very closely with. So that gives us the opportunity to really speed up the transaction and leverage the power of our underlying technology stack.
As home buyers and home sellers using your platform still require the services of a regulated conveyancing professional, you might just talk us through, say, the journey for a home seller. So people are thinking of selling their home. What are the steps they go through?
Thank you, Carol. It's a very, very good question. So our objective is to assist the conveyancers and the conveyancing solicitors with the transaction. And a lot of the friction in today's process is caused through communication, through the data gathering process, which often isn't streamlined. So what do we do to improve that? Our platform offers, for example, a digital onboarding process, which means customers, the home buyers and home sellers, are identified online. So they don't need to come in with their passport. They can do it through our portal in their own time, and the conveyancer will then be notified when that step has been completed. And the same is true for anti-money laundering checks, and also for the legal questionnaires relating to the property. In England, these are the TA forms, and we have broken them down and explained them in a very easy to understand way, so that customers who tend not to have, who only do one or maybe a couple of property transactions often in their life, we make it much easier for them to understand these forms. And again, this is all done online, and we will inform the conveyancer through our platform when that step has been completed. So from a customer's perspective, it is very convenient. They can go through all of it in their own time, wherever they are. There's no paperwork involved. And from a conveyancer's perspective, it also significantly reduces their touch points with the onboarding process, because everything is done by the customers in their own time, and the conveyancers will receive notifications once it's ready. when it comes to further further gathering about property data, our platform also automatically sources information from over 300 data points, tapping into publicly available data, but also data from HM Land Registry or other providers to really draw a very comprehensive picture about the property. And this is all centrally stored on our platform for the conveyances from both sides, the buy side and the sell side, easy to access.
Very good. And Konrad, are home buyers and home sellers continuing to choose their own conveyancer, or do they have to work with one within your network?
So we have a good selection of conveyancers. We work with our partner solicitors and conveyancers who we carefully select. We find that there are a lot of conveyancers out there who do a terrific job and who really want to move their clients' transactions forward. And those are the solicitors we work with. They share the same spirit. They want to significantly reduce transaction times, and they open to use technology to reduce manual work steps. Because they have also realized that manual workflows consume their time and erode their hourly rates. So using technology as an underlying assistant really is a win-win situation for all sides.
Okay, and I'm very aware that one of the cultural differences, say, between Ireland and the UK is that historically in the UK, people would move every 7 to 10 years, whereas certainly in Ireland, this might be a twice to 3 times in a lifetime transaction. But for such an infrequent transaction, one thing we've seen is that trust is massively important. So for people who have their own family solicitor who might deal with, they're not conveyancers as such. It's a family solicitor that is called in for all legal concerns. So actually, has this been a barrier for people then using your service, that they want to use their own solicitor, or is it a case that their solicitor can sign up for your service?
The latter is the case. We're constantly growing our network of estate agents and solicitors. And we're always looking for like-minded solicitors to cooperate with.
And how has market traction been for you so far?
So far, very good. We had amazing feedback just recently. The HM Land Registry featured us in one of their blog posts, which had a very positive resonance for us. Lots of people reached out to us telling us their stories, telling us how the war stories about property transactions, how long they waited, how their transactions fell through, and how they are frankly fed up with the current way it works. And that obviously was a great motivation and really good to hear. I think we're hitting a nerve there. People want easier and stress-free property transactions, and rightly so. We can do it, and we are doing it.
Yeah, look, and positive sentiment is always so important, but in terms of actual market traction, is it mainly home buyers or home sellers who are engaging your services?
So we work with both. A lot of home sellers reach out to us because they want to sell with certainty, and we also help them to prepare the property to be transaction ready. So a home seller can really gain momentum by using Conveyo. To give you an example, we are about to complete a transaction for a property in just about under 6 weeks now. So that's a really good timeline, and we're very happy with that.
Very good. And do you know what the comparable might have been, say, if that particular user had just gone through the traditional processes? I mean, would you be looking at 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously, we will never quite get to the bottom of it. But what happened was that the purchaser had received a gift to be able to purchase the property, and from a relative, and that relative was about to go on a long travel for 6 weeks. And what they weren't aware of is that they needed to execute a gift deed in person, witnessed by a third-party solicitor here in the UK. So we caught the giftor the day before they left to the airport, and arranged for the execution of that gift deed. I think a day later would have been too late, and I think it would have been a broken deal, because the transaction would have not moved forward for at least 6 weeks until the giftor returned.
Konrad, you're the founder of this, and I mentioned to you off air, but we've spoken about it numerous times, kind of on different episodes of the show here over the last 4 years, that certainly in Ireland and we know internationally, there have been so many attempts to speed up the conveyancing, particularly in Ireland and the UK. But I suppose I'm more familiar with the attempts that were made to speed up conveyancing in the Irish market, and it is still a transaction that is, it is still kind of the most fraught with difficulties, despite the fact that our, the mapping technologies and the platforms, the database, and actually even the state agencies who are transacting this, the underlying functions that we need to be able to speed up conveyancing, they've all modernized and digitized over the past decade or decade and a half. And yet conveyancing is still the laggard. So where do you think kind of the points of resistance are?
It's a very good point, Carol. When we look at what has evolved in terms of how the world has evolved over the past 40 years or so, we see so much change, and a lot of it is we incorporate in our daily lives and benefit from it daily. But then when we look at conveyancing, it seems that so many things that could be improved haven't really been fully improved yet. And I think the real estate market is traditionally a market that is slower to adapt to innovation than other markets. But that being said, we see innovation come through in different ways and forms. I mentioned earlier the online or digital ID and AML checks, or source of funds checks. That's something that seems to be now widely adopted by the market. And I think innovation will come through more and more. And there's also a shift in thinking and a shift in culture. We talk to many conveyancers, but also estate agents in the market who are open to change things, and who are also looking to improve the way we transact. And I think there's a real chance there to work together and turn conveyancing around and bring it with the support of state-of-the-art technology.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with you, even though I spoke about maybe some of the frustrated attempts, going back to 2015, 16, 17. I do believe that the timing is right now, I think, and that's been a huge difference in terms of consumer behavior and industry behavior, and their attitudes towards technology and their willingness to rely on technology and trust the technology for such a large transaction. And I think COVID and the pandemic has just been such a huge driver of that, really from all parties. But I'm curious, what's your own background? Do you come from a legal or property background, or did you just have a very, very frustrating transaction?
My background is actually legal. I started my career off as a finance and M&A lawyer at Freshfields, and then been in the financial industry for the past 10 years with a focus on M&A and property transactions. And I founded Conveyo together with my co-founder Andrea, who is a data scientist and algorithmic trader. And by combining our legal and technical skills or technological skills, we're in a good position to improve that current process.
Yeah, that's a really nice kind of blend of founder there. I'm thinking of the practical day to day. So one of the things that we know, there's no doubt that the problem you've hit on is a very real problem. It's a very recognized and accepted problem. Unfortunately, it's probably too accepted as a problem in terms of conveyancing delays and the impact. But I suppose we're always thinking of the human impact. So we're thinking of, for buyers and sellers, particularly those in a chain that need to sell their home and buy something else. And that transaction, both transactions need to close on the same day. Have you had instances of that, or have you had to tweak your technology to accommodate chains?
Chains are obviously tricky. Many attempts have been made to manage them, to control them. And what we often hear is that people say, well, you can try to improve the process, but you will always only be as fast as the slowest one in the chain. So that is a problem. And it's not a problem we currently deal with. So far, our transactions have been chain-free, but it's something that we want to look into at a later stage.
Very good. Well, tell me, what is the future for Conveyo?
The future for Conveyo, yes, we are growing our network and our capacity to help people move homes faster and hassle-free. We are planning to do a funding round next year, and then we will look at other markets. We already had some talks in that respect, and we will then bring our innovation to other markets with similar problems.
You mentioned there in terms of raising further funds, you already have the backing of a VC. Just for the Proptech founders who are listening in today, and construction technology founders, you might just share some of your early experience there, because it's really only in the last decade that VCs have gotten behind maybe Proptech construction technology, and already we've seen the focus of VC shift more towards smart building technologies that are addressing carbon emissions, and similarly for construction technology. So actually, climate tech, it feels like Proptech had a very short window before actually climate tech really started to take priority, and probably the big opportunities are across the construction and climate space now. So you might just talk us through maybe some of your experience in raising capital and having to convince VCs that not just the problem you're addressing is real, but that actually you'll be able to impact when you're trying to take in consumer buyers and sellers of homes, but also to bring the real estate sector with you, and to bring the legal sector, which is really entrenched in their traditional methodologies.
Yeah, that is. I'm happy to do that. Our VC is called Antler. Antler is a global VC. They're very active, and they are a generalist. So they're not only focused on PropTech, but in the wider VC environment, we also talk to a lot of VCs that are prop tech or climate tech focused, and as those are interlinked. And there's currently a lot of focus on those sectors, as they have been a little bit neglected when it comes to innovation and progress over the past decade or so. So there's a lot to do, and the VCs are aware of that, and are very helpful for young companies like ours to turn our vision into reality and make a real impact on the property market, but also in a more general terms on the climate and property world.
Very good. Konrad, listen, thanks a million for your time today. Thank you for sharing the journey that you've had. And, I wish yourself, Andrea, and the team there at Conveyo the very best of luck. Like I said, the problem that you're addressing is a very real problem, but the challenges seem quite ingrained. So there's a culture shift that needs to happen alongside. And I personally will be watching with interest what you do in the UK market, because it's definitely something that we need in the Irish market, and many have tried and unfortunately have failed. And I think maybe what was underestimated was the culture part of bringing a regulated profession along with you. So I think it's a really interesting one. I'll certainly be watching it, and the very best of luck to yourself and the team there. I appreciate your time today. That was Konrad Rotthege, founder of Conveyo. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out all of our other shows, construction and real estate shows on iPropertyRadio. Before we go, just a special word of thanks to our sponsor, Proptech Ireland, the hub for innovators, investors, and indeed for industry leaders. So our thanks to the team at Proptech Ireland for supporting the podcast and making these conversations possible. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Proptech Hot Seat here on iPropertyRadio.